Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you're all safe and well today. And welcome to our webinar, The Post Pandemic Hospitality Landscape Embracing the New Normal with Hygiene Focused Strategies for Philippines Travel Recovery. This webinar is hosted by RedDoorz, and it'll tackle a very new program called the HygienePass certification program. It's an industry wide cleanliness and sanitation certification program that follows the new set of health and safety guidelines for the hospitality industry in light of COVID 19. And there's no doubt that the COVID 19 pandemic has impacted the tourism industry at large. With over 2 million hospitality workers displaced and over 100,000 Filipinos now affected, the behavior of Filipino consumers and travelers is shifting and therefore changing their requirements with regards to how they choose and book their hotels today. Now, we're sure that hotel owners like you are finding advanced, driven ways to cope up with these new normal requirements and demands. And so, Red Doors has found just the right solution to today's challenges. Before we begin, let me introduce myself. I am Anel Tayo Juego, and I am a writer, the business features writer for the Philippine Daily Inquirer, one of the largest broadsheets here in the Philippines. And today we have two speakers with us. First is Mr. Adil Mubarak. He's the Vice President for Operations of Red Doors, and he's the one spearheading this very exciting program. We also have with us Dr. Renzo Ginto, Hygiene Pass Public Health Consultant. Dr. Ginto is a public health specialist in global health, health security, and sustainable development. He has nearly a decade of experience in various aspects of public health and has previously consulted for different organizations such as the World Health Organization, World Bank, and the Philippines Department of Health. He recently returned to the Philippines after finishing his Doctor of Public Health degree at Harvard University. Wow, these two are big names. So let's get started. Let me throw the first question to Dr. Ginto. What is the current status of COVID 19 today in the Philippines?
Thank you very much, Anel, for moderating this discussion. It's great to be with Adil, from Red Doors. He's now in Singapore. And I hope that everyone who's listening, tuning in, are safe and sound in the comfort of their homes or wherever you are now. So, what is the situation now, specifically in the Philippines? And this is not so much good news. We're now the top notcher, unfortunately, in Southeast Asia when it comes to the number of COVID-19 positive cases. So as we speak today, and here in the Philippines, the Department of Health actually updates the numbers every 4 p.m. So they probably are holding now the press con. But this is the latest, data from last night: 147,526 cases from yesterday, and around 2,400 reported deaths. And how does this compare with our other neighboring countries in Southeast Asia? Indonesia, which is a way bigger country than the Philippines, has only, well, not only, but has 130,000 cases. So we've already exceeded Indonesia by more than 15,000 cases. And as I've said, they're a much bigger country. And there's a University of the Philippines projection that by the end of August, we might have around 130 to 150,000 cases. And as I've said, we're already at 147, and we're not even halfway the month of August. And so it's not a very good picture that we're seeing now. And that is why, if you remember, just last week, the medical societies of the Philippines called for a timeout. They
Yeah, I
asked for
remember that. Yeah.
a resumption of the modified enhanced community quarantine, which is a much more stringent version of the community quarantine, to ensure that, we have less people moving around. We hope that it will buy us more time to actually recalibrate the domestic response strategy of the Philippine government. So these are just some of the updates, and we can talk more about the current situation. But I think, in summary, we're still not successful in flattening the curve, so to speak.
Yeah, it seems cases are rising every day, but I hope I hope we do get to that point where we start to see a lowering of cases, especially for our health workers, because they're the ones who are receiving
The
the
front,
brunt of, yeah, right.
absolutely.
Um yeah, and for Adil, I'm sure Red Doors had some form of assistance for your partners and for your customers, right? Amid this pandemic. Could you discuss what did you do to support them, to assist them?
Sure. So, I think one of the interesting thing, right, when we relook at the hospitality industry or the tourism industry that's been badly impacted by COVID, right? Obviously, due to travel restrictions that is being put in place, and obviously there's a lot of focus on cleanliness in properties, and obviously for us, we started this pilot project, obviously the Hygiene Pass program, which one of the things that we're going to discuss today in Indonesia. And fortunately, we also tie up with a doctor who's also a public health expert, who's Dr. Renzo, is based in Philippines. And we actually come up with a program which is very, very defined to make sure cleanliness and safe distance is being put in place for customers and consumers before obviously entering into a hotel or entering into a hospitality property, and ensure that when there is a particular hygiene pass certification that's being done and audited, it's actually us working together with a public health expert doctor. And obviously, this is a WHO international standard that we came up with for this hygiene pass, and how we can actually leverage us on using our technology to ensure that hotels on a daily basis make sure that there's a proper auditing and certification or cleaning logs that's being recorded into our system. So obviously we saw this as an opportunity to how can we actually get our consumers out at the front to start utilizing our hotels, to start going to stay in hotels and feeling, hey, I don't need to worry about if there was any COVID-19 cases there, because every single guest that comes into a property has their temperature checks, obviously going through our audit questions, which we make sure that every single day that's being practiced. So we saw Hygiene Pass as a program. One is to give the consumer that confidence, but at the same time, we would like the local people to travel. As we know in Philippines, that close to about 73% of tourism decline due to the pandemic, obviously due to travel
Yes,
restrictions and
yes.
COVID-19. And right now in Philippines, there's a pickup of demand travel, like certain countries what we see in Vietnam and Indonesia, where we would like the Filipinos to actually start traveling, staying in properties. However, we want them to stay in, obviously, in a hygiene pass and RedDoorz properties. But this hygiene pass will ensure that there's a consumer confidence that this particular property has met the kind of standards that's been set, obviously by us and Dr. Renzo.
Okay. Since we talked about cases still going up here, Dr. Renzo, what has been your observation with regards to the behavior of Filipinos? Are they practicing all the required hygiene, sanitation measures that has been imposed?
Yeah, and I'm sure you're familiar with this narrative in the
Mhm.
country where Filipinos are always blamed or tagged
Yeah.
as being not disciplined. They're not
Mm-hmm.
abiding by hygienic practices and rules, and they're not wearing their masks all the time. But there is actually a study by the Imperial College London. They surveyed people from different countries, and guess what? The Filipinos are the top notchers in terms of wearing of masks and
Oh, wow.
following rules. And I think the Filipinos,
Mm-hmm.
once they are made aware about the
Mm-hmm.
importance of protecting their own health, of safety, and they're also given the necessary tools to,
Mm-hmm.
protect themselves. I think Filipinos are a very obedient and responsible, population. And so I think, and I always say it takes two to tango. We need the populace to be abiding by the rules, to be observing, healthy behaviors. But at the same time, we need governments and the private sector, the whole of society, to be putting the necessary measures, protections, so that people can actually live safely and feel more secured whenever they're outside.
Absolutely.
They
Very
know
important.
that there's a strong contact tracing system, for example, and
Yes, yes.
unfortunately, here in the Philippines, there's one observation by a high level official that I
Mm-hmm.
think only around six local governments out of hundreds that have very robust contact tracing systems. In
No.
contrast, and I just learned it from Adil a while ago, that in Singapore, everyone has this QR code, and every
Absolutely.
movement of every
Oh.
Singaporean is actually tracked and monitored. So if there is one person who
Mm-hmm.
reports, some symptoms, and then after testing, that person has been identified as COVID-19 positive, it's
Yeah.
so easy to identify who are the people that person came into contact to.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just to share on top of Dr. Renzo, right? Wherever in Singapore, there's QR codes placed in every location. So obviously, if you have a temperature above 37.5, and obviously you will not be allowed to enter the mall, or you'll not be allowed to enter the respective retail area. And that's one of the key things that in Singapore we are able to manage very well in terms of tracking each respective person that comes to a retail or to shops or to a restaurant. And the first thing that they need to do is get their phone out, get a QR code, and obviously they already get their registration detail, which is pretty much stored in a database. If obviously there's some issues happening, or there's a COVID-19 person that came to the respective restaurant, the person that has that is at that particular period of time is being contacted by the Ministry of Health. So that's one of the ways that actually is being done in Singapore. But yeah, I'm very surprised, right, Dr. Enzo, that the Philippines number one for wearing masks and obviously following rules. So that's really great, and I think it's also a good opportunity that this HygienePass program, right, where we're actually, this is our first webinar that we're actually introducing that all these kind of measures and obviously sanitizers that is being placed in the properties are upkeep to the WHO and obviously the Ministry of Health standards in Philippines.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's good news for you because with the hygiene pass implemented here, you're gonna be sure that Filipinos are gonna follow it, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. But how is RedDoorz coping with the restrictions placed by the Philippine government, which change every time we shift to a different level of quarantine? Has it been difficult for you, for
Oh,
RedDoorz?
definitely, right? Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, it's difficult to the fact that we would like
Mm-hmm.
to get tourism, obviously domestic tourism, to come in, right? I think that's where the
Yeah.
market is right now
Mm-hmm.
in Philippines, and we don't see many much tourists coming in. As I shared previously, that's close to about 70-75% drop of
Mm-hmm.
tourism, and with all the restrictions being put in place, with people traveling from different countries, and obviously they have to be put in quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it more difficult for someone like myself or any one of us
Mm-hmm.
to travel to any other countries and obviously come back. You get a 14 days quarantine and so on. So, and obviously for us, is what we want is definitely to get domestic travel to go up. And we've seen improvements, obviously, in certain countries like Indonesia, Singapore, and obviously Singapore got obviously our staycations approved, and Vietnam as well. So there's that domestic growth where people can't travel, they still want to stay in a hotel, but obviously they still want to feel a secure place, a safe place, definitely, because there are certain hotels, obviously, that's being actually used as a quarantine hotel. And obviously, with this
Yes.
certification program that is being put in place, just gives that assurance to the customers and obviously the clients to make sure that they stay in a property that would have the full standards that are being met. So that's one really key thing that we in terms of the Hygiene Pass program, we didn't do much changes in terms of whether there was a different kind of quarantine
Mm-hmm.
zones. Although that in Philippines there were quite a number of restrictions being put in place. But this is an opportunity for a lot of hotel owners, a lot of hotel managers, or you to come in and be part of this program and have that mark in terms of Hygiene Pass in their OTAs, in the properties, such as the
Mm-hmm.
certificate, the collaterals, which can be visibly seen online before prior booking. Because all
Oh,
customers, no
okay.
one now is definitely a certification or a stamp of approval where hey, this property has done a proper kind of process to ensure that they've gotten a mark. And obviously, we're not getting the mark just because of a certification that we just did. No, it wasn't done that way. We worked together with obviously Dr. Renzo. And again, it's a very similar kind of questions that we have in Indonesia and also in Singapore, which is very as per the guideline by WHO.
Okay.
So, yeah, can I just add? Because
Sure.
a while ago we were referring to hygiene practices of Filipinos.
Yes,
But
yes.
also, it's important to also consider how they actually perceive,
Mm-hmm.
what's happening now, and also how the current situation is shaping their travel plans and decisions. And there have been several surveys already done in the Philippines by different groups, but there is only one key message that Filipinos, of course, they're eager to travel, but they will only do so when they feel a very high level of security. For instance, in the travel destinations, in the
Mm-hmm.
hotels that they stay in, but also in the entire journey of travel. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just about the location, but the transportation, etc. And so it's
Yes.
important for us Filipinos, in order to restore the confidence of even just domestic travelers. Forget about the international travelers, although definitely we want
Yep,
international
not now.
tourism
Yeah,
to be reignited, right? But even for the domestic tourists alone, there are two things. One, we need to make sure that as a society, we do everything we can to suppress the viral transmission. Because the more it circulates, the virus, I mean, the more it circulates in our communities, the less confident the people will be getting out. Of course, more so if there are more stringent lockdowns. You really cannot move. That's an order from the state. But on the other hand, I think the other important consideration is if hotels and accommodations such as the RedDoorz network of hotels and accommodations are really abiding by, actually not just abiding by DOT and WHO rules, but even going over and beyond.
absolutely.
Because that will further increase the confidence of tourists to the safety and the hygiene, the hygiene, the level of hygiene of
In the
these
property. Yeah,
properties.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
one key thing that I would like to highlight, right, is just
Mm-hmm.
not doing an audit, right, of getting the property. Okay, you have a hand sanitizer next to your
Uh-huh.
reception, you're wearing a
Mm-hmm.
mask, you have a thermometer doing your temperature checks, but
Mm-hmm.
I can do an audit today and get everyone certified. I think it's very easy to say that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
what's really the advantage of us as a tech player in Southeast Asia is
Mm-hmm.
we use our obviously property management system, which is our software in our hotels where a customer comes in and do check in and check out. And
Mm-hmm.
we leverage using that obviously on making sure every single guest that comes into a hygiene pass property gets their
Mm-hmm.
temperature check and is being recorded in the system. And obviously,
Okay.
every guest and even a supplier that comes into the property, or
Mm.
even staff that comes into the property, records their temperature into the system and obviously gets tallied. And if they have a high fever, obviously the
Mm-hmm.
system will definitely pop up an alert and inform the PIC or the property manager to make sure that, hey, there's someone who's unwell in the property. Can we make
Mm-hmm.
sure that he or she seek a medical attention? And and
Mm-hmm.
and and what about cleaning, right? one aspect that we thought through, and I've already thought through many times, is that okay, I've done the audit today with my property managers. One of the key concern is how do we make sure the respective hotels that are hygiene pass does the cleaning. So we
Okay.
track our cleaning on a 3 times basis, obviously in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening, to make sure that there's a proper cleaning records and logs recorded in the system to make sure we upkeep to the kind of standards that a hotel should have. So those are some technology initiatives that we use to really support this program in terms of scaling it across our different properties.
Mhm. Could you just maybe backtrack and give us a bit of background on how did you come up with this program? What was the process behind it?
So just to share, this particular program, we wanted, number one, the core point is that how can we make sure our consumer comes back to our properties, to our hotels, and in order for us to put definitely a timestamp, right? We want to make sure that a property A and a property B, how can we ensure consumers when they choose a property or they select a property, hey, I would like to stay in a property A. Why? Because there's certain health guidelines that they're following. And a lot of consumers out there or guests who's looking for accommodation, they're really looking at cleanliness and the hygiene protocols that's being put in place in properties. So many, in fact, 60%, there was a survey that was conducted, 60% of consumers right now look at cleanliness as a top number one key criteria when they select a property. And hence, that's one of the reasons why that we launched this in Indonesia. We have close to about 1,500 properties in Indonesia as a start. We partner obviously with the Public Health Association and then a health expert who's based there, and came up with this program. While we were doing this program, obviously we wanted to look at innovative ways to use our technology. It wasn't just a simple Excel spreadsheet or getting an auditor to go to the property and just do an audit, but actually using our technology to leverage and making sure that properties actually adhere to the kind of standards. And obviously doing collaterals, right? We want to make sure that consumers as well, when they come to the guest that comes to the hotel, they are aware that this particular property have the Hygiene Pass certifications, simple things like queue markers. When you enter a property, you'll see a Hygiene Pass about safe distancing. You have hand sanitizers placed in high touch point areas. You have your temperature checks. Staff is wearing masks. These are key areas just for us to mitigate and obviously stop the transmission of COVID-19. But most importantly, we saw it as an opportunity to get our partner properties to be on the online channels and OTAs, and when a person makes a booking in OTAs, obviously they see the Hygiene Pass certification in terms of cleanliness standards is being well upkept. But most importantly, for me and for my team, and obviously Dr. Renzo working together with him on doing this program, is ensuring that, hey, we would like people to start traveling. We would like people to obviously stay in hotels. And I'm very certain that NL and Renzo, any one of us here who's here today would love to start traveling. And international travel, it's going to be an issue for the next couple of months. But obviously, domestically, there are many properties, many hotels in Philippines. We can actually benefit through this program. And that's how we actually came about Hygiene Pass.
Wow. Yeah. It seems that you decided to look at this from a very medical angle.
Well,
Why did you go that route?
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely, also medical, also based on the WHO guidelines, but also
Okay.
ensuring that the consumers, when they come and stay in our hotel, they do not need to worry, right? Where have I gone into a property where there's a COVID-19 case previously? What are the kind of if there was a COVID-19 case, what has the property done, right? Have they done a proper disinfectant? And it's one of the key criteria to make sure that the Hygiene Pass is met. If there's a COVID-19 case, within 24 hours, there's a disinfectant happening in the property or in the specific room.
Okay. So, Dr. Renzo, what made you decide to, go with the program?
Well, apart from I myself have been a client or a customer of
Oh, we're the
RedDoorz,
same. We're the
right?
same.
Right?
Yeah.
Glad.
Yes.
So that's somehow an endorsement. More seriously, I think every organization, every company, every business, especially in this day and age of the COVID-19 pandemic, will benefit from having medical advice, public health advice within reach. And because one, we are actually tackling a very complex issue, right?
Mhm.
The last time we had a pandemic like this of a global nature was 1918, more than
Yeah.
100 years ago. And during that time, there was not even technology, right? The technologies that are present now, with Zoom and the technology that HygienePass does have. But also, there's an avalanche of information from left, right, up, down, from all corners. And I think that's even driven by the open availability of information through digital technology. There's so much fake news, and actually there's a term, there's an infodemic, an
Oh,
epidemic
yeah.
of misinformation and fake news that we hear from different corners. And so it's important that people like me who studied medicine and these issues for like more than a decade, if uh, are being able to communicate this, for instance, to the likes of Adil and the people at RedDoorz and HygienePass in a more comprehensible, digestible way. In the Philippines, we always say, oh, if it's too technical, too jargony, we get a nosebleed, right? It's
Yeah.
too hard to understand. And so more than ever, we have a responsibility to make sure that information is within reach, is accessible, it's understandable, and most importantly, is translated into policies, guidelines, best practices, for instance, in the accommodation sector. And finally, I think, there's so many policy changes. Yesterday you'll hear this from the Department of Tourism. Tomorrow you'll hear this from the Department of Health. So that is also the role of people like me to help, study and analyze these changing policies that change even on a day-to-day basis, and make sense out of these changes to make sure that companies like RedDoorz and their properties are attuned, with the rules and regulations set forth by the likes of the Philippine government or even the World Health Organization.
Okay. So you touched on that. So will that be your specific role for Hygiene Pass?
Yes, so that's my
Mhm.
role,
Okay.
as well as helping them, for instance, in educational activities such as this webinar. So
Absolutely.
probably will see us more in the weeks and months to come.
And obviously one key point as well, like to add to this hygiene pass program, it wasn't just getting a program and just putting up to properties, but we actually got our property managers to actually go through a training session with Dr. Renzo.
Mm.
So obviously go through all the kind of sanitization, hygiene practice, and all that through all our property managers, and making sure that when the actual audit happens, it's obviously based on our standards and as per our guidelines.
Mhm. All right. Just a quick reminder for our audience that you can type in your comments and your hotel name, and if you are a Red Doors partner, please indicate. If you have questions, just type it in the comment box. Yeah. So continuing our discussion, you touched Adil on technology and how it plays a role in Hygiene Pass. Why is it important that this kind of program should be backed by technology?
Okay, so really great question, right? I think there's a lot of probably not in Philippines yet, but I think in Singapore and Indonesia, there are a lot of auditing programs that is being done, whether it's a 6 months, once a time audit. but it only happens through, whether it's through a mystery shopper, like a typical hotel. If they want to make sure that the quality checks are done well, there's a proper brand standards that are being well upkept, and then I'll get a mystery shopper to come to the hotel. And a lot of cleaning logs, right, are being well kept on a daily basis, probably through paperwork, doing an audit, and just uploading it inside the system. Once I've done an audit once, and then, okay, I certify you. And the next 364 days, I'll probably just show the paper, and then, okay, let's wait for example, Dr. Renzo to come to the hotel. And then I'm just going to prepare 1 day in advance and just clean the whole property and making sure the standards are upkeep. Now, when one of the key ideas when we did this HygienePass, we wanted it to be easy accessible. It wasn't something very difficult to pass a HygienePass. As long as you have certain measures being put in place, such as cleaning logs, hand sanitizers, masks, safe distancing measures being put in place, a temperature that's being checked, you can actually get a HygienePass in your property. Now, one of the key things that we wanted to think of was that, okay, what happens one day if we have 500, 1,000 HygienePass properties across different countries, or perhaps in Philippines, for example? How can I make sure I can't be getting Dr. Renzo or even myself to go to 1,000 properties every single day to make sure that there's a certification, or did they do a proper cleaning log and so on? So what we did was we used our technology where property owners or property hotel managers making sure that the cleaning logs are being done and obviously recorded inside the system. Temperature checks are being put in place. If there's no temperature check, the guest can't check in. Obviously, the temperature check is very important. It's part of the HygienePass program. Hand sanitizers must be placed in the property. And obviously, what we also do is periodically we have our auditors or property managers who will come into the property to make sure that obviously the standards are upkeep. But most importantly, if a particular property of a HygienePass property does not make compliance in 48 hours, for example, if I'm a HygienePass property and I didn't update, or I didn't do any cleanings, or I didn't do my temperature checks, number one, you can't get guests to check into your property. Number two, if you didn't update any cleaning logs into your room, what's going to happen is that the system will basically pop up and hang, right? You are not able to check in to the property. So we can really upkeep to our standards to make sure that, hey, ensure you update your HygienePass checklist on a daily basis, 3 times a day. Make sure every guest that comes into the property have their temperature checks. And obviously, if you're not doing that, then obviously the system will pretty much bear you from doing anything else until it gets locked if you're not completing your audit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that sounds.
And that will be very important. If you don't have the system, then you will not be able to obviously run operationally very smooth, right? Because you need the system to know which room to filter the guests in, to do the check-in, to do the check-out, printing out receipt. And that's one of the things that we thought through, that to make sure that every single property does the audit based on our standards, and obviously using technology to leverage on our strength.
Mm-hmm. Well, as a RedDoorz customer, that does make me feel safe. To know all of those processes.
Absolutely, Anel and Dr. Enzo, right?
I think soon.
Absolutely, absolutely. You will want to definitely stay in a HygienePass property because of the different measures that have been put in place, which is going to really help the property from the guests, from OTAs, prior bookings. It's in our direct app. We will have a HygienePass properties, which will be thick. So a guest eventually will want to stay in a HygienePass property, bearing in mind all the guidelines that we really provided.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure our property partners are wondering, what will their operations look like now with the HygienePass in place?
So really operationally, if you ask me in terms of like, are you going to have another additional staff to be in the property? No, right? What we're doing is very process oriented, right? Where proper recordings are being put in place, proper measures are being put in place to ensure strict guidelines, and obviously upkeeping the cleanliness standards, right? Because those kind of cleaning logs that needs to be recorded in the system needs to be done. Prior to that, probably the housekeeping staff probably just clean the room clockwise, making sure everything is neat and tidy. Probably doesn't have hand sanitizers being put in public high touch point areas. So operationally, we're not giving more problems, right? We're actually, number one, ensuring that all these standards and processes is number one core point is to mitigate the COVID-19 transmission, right? We don't want, if there is a COVID-19 guest inside the property, all the public touch point areas have hand sanitizers, high cleaning logs, which has been already pretty much disinfect, whether it's in the lift or whether it's in the reception area, to just mitigate the kind of transmission of any guest that stays in our RedDoorz property with a hygiene pass. So operationally, there won't be much changes, but process-wise, there will be temperature checks. There will be obviously a much more detailed eye in terms of cleanliness across our properties, making sure hand sanitizers are top up in different areas. The front office, making sure safe distance measures are being put in place. Obviously, if the restaurants or public area, the staff will need to be aware to make sure that safe distance measures are being put in place in the property. And obviously, all staff needs to wear masks and obviously record their temperatures into the system before they report to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess aside from the obvious benefit of this keeping your property COVID-free, what are the other benefits that can, property owners can...
I will not say that I can guarantee a hygiene pass property a COVID-free environment. I think that will be, right, Dr. Renzo, I think that will be very difficult for me to say, right? But one most important thing, a particular property, if obviously a hygiene pass, if someone has COVID, right, in the particular property, there are already high standards, a process that mitigates and stop transmission across different rooms or different guests in the property. And that's one of the most important thing when we came out of this program to actually, when we thought of this program.
Okay. How about for Dr. Renzo?
Sure.
What would you, because I guess you're opening this to other properties, right? Not just RedDoorz. What would you, I guess, tell other hotel properties? What are the benefits of Hygiene Pass for them?
Yeah, I think I would just re-echo what has been already mentioned earlier, by Adil, by myself, customers, prospective tourists, prospective clients, they're all looking for some guarantee, some, seal that will assure that, the property has actually abided by the highest level of hygiene and sanitation standards, especially now that customers, tourists, they are actually thinking about their own health and safety every single day. That
Absolutely.
might not be, the reality during the pre-pandemic era, where, while I said Filipinos are very disciplined, on the other hand, we're also kind of risk-taking and, you go to places without really, without health being at the top of mind. And then now, the world has, been flipped upside down. And people, sure, they want leisure, they want to see beautiful destinations, but priority number one is to make sure they don't get COVID.
Yeah.
And so, these kinds of initiatives such as Hygiene Pass that explicitly let the customers know that the property has actually followed the rules and even went beyond the rules, is something that will again restore the confidence of these tourists and hopefully eventually will help refuel the engine of Philippine tourism, which has been badly affected by COVID-19.
Yeah, and I guess that peace of mind that we all need when we travel once again,
Absolutely.
right?
And if you go to the airline, they will definitely have hygiene travel kits, right? sanitizers, face masks. If you travel, some airlines are really doing it, and even in restaurants, you will see a towel, hand sanitizer towels being put in place. So I think that's something which to add up Dr. Enzo is a lot of people like myself now. If I travel, I will have a hand sanitizer just next to me, just to make sure that I clean my hands before touching my face and so on.
All right. We are getting questions now from our audience. And for those who are still watching, please do, keep the questions coming. But let me read through the first ones. What differentiates HygienePass from other certification programs? Are there others in the Philippines?
So, not that I'm aware of, but I think we're the first HygienePass program. In fact, in Indonesia, we did first, and in Philippines, we launched it first. I mean, a typical hotel company would, different other hotel management agreements would probably have them, like the Accor brands, the Hyatt will probably have their own program as well. I think pretty much a lot of hotel management companies have their own program. Okay. But it is HygienePass, obviously, we're open to obviously even a non-RedDoorz property who would like to be part of RedDoorz. So, for us, we're obviously taking the assistance from Dr. Renzo, obviously with his experience, and using our technology to really leverage on our strength. And ensuring that each consumers and any tourist that comes into a property, they get the kind of confidence level that they are assured that this particular property has adhered to the kind of standards that we have already set. So yeah, I think we are the first program for the hotel industry in Philippines that actually provide HygienePass and open to other hotels to actually apply for it. And obviously we're looking at our RedDoorz property as a priority, but we're definitely open to get other hotels to be part of this HygienePass program.
Okay. There's a question here by Arime. Do they receive a sample of like a checklist to be HygienePass certified? I guess a checklist of what needs to be, implemented in their property.
Sure, absolutely, right. So before the particular audit.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I lost you actually.
Yeah,
but okay,
sorry.
So before a particular audit happens, there are prerequisite questions that are actually required for the particular property to make sure that the audit happens. And obviously, with a lot of lockdowns being put in place currently in Philippines, a lot of the things that are currently doing is still doing a pre-audit, and that doesn't mean that you're certified in a hotel. A real actual audit needs to happen, and obviously that depends on the situation on the ground in Philippines. But yes, there's a prerequisite checklist that we actually provide to the property owners before the actual audit to make sure that all the informations are adhered. Because if there's one particular question that is not adhered, for example, if there's no safe distancing measures being put in place, or number one, there's no cleaning logs in properties or by the housekeeping staff, then we are not able to certify the particular property.
Okay. You have a partner, Sylvia Magno from Davao, who she wants to know, will the HygienePass program increase the revenue of her hotel?
I think it's a very, very good question. Who was that?
Sylvia Magno.
Sylvia, I think Sylvia raised as a really good question about whether HygienePass will increase revenue. Number one, definitely the consumer confidence will be there. Definitely a hotel A who has HygienePass versus a hotel B who doesn't have HygienePass, I will definitely stay in a HygienePass property. Obviously based on perimeter, and obviously a lot of OTAs now, they look at what kind of sanitization program that a particular property has, and actually you can actually list it into the OTAs. And one thing that we are doing in our HygienePass property is that directly if someone makes booking direct or RedDoorz app, there will be the HygienePass certificate that's actually being placed in the OTA website and also in the direct website. So consumers will definitely stay in the property, bearing in mind that there will be HygienePass property. There's that assurance, and based on Indonesia, we've seen an improvement of occupancy, obviously, across HygienePass properties in Indonesia. Obviously, due to consumers' confidence, and obviously people would like to travel, and domestically, people would like to stay in a property that has HygienePass.
Okay. I have a question here that maybe Dr. Renzo could answer. They're asking, this is also from Davao, if you would recommend that hotels use that UVC light, that germicidal sanitizer that uses the ultraviolet light.
Right. That's a very technical question. And honestly, I don't have an immediate answer as to
Yeah.
the specific
Because it's pretty
technologies.
popular now.
Yeah, but I think the general principle is,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what you use, disinfect to disinfect your items. You need to make sure that for instance, in the DOT guidelines for linen, you have to do it for around 15 minutes. You soak it, for 15
Okay.
minutes. And of course, you handle it with more care if it's known that it was used by someone who is a COVID positive,
Yeah.
traveler. So there are already specific measures written in the DOT guidelines. I invite our friends to actually refer to that.
Yeah. So let's stick to the official guidelines. I think that would be best for everyone, right? Yeah. Um, how can the travel industry cope with these changes, all the changes that we are implementing with the program, and how will it change business travel? This is from Tita Reyes from Pasig, also a RedDoorz partner.
Definitely to me, right? I know.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sorry, Adil,
Yeah.
sorry,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
So she's asking, yeah.
well, domestically travel will be strong, right? For the next, I
Mm-hmm.
would say, for the next 6 or 9 months, bearing in mind until a proper vaccine is being put in place, right? And international travel will only likely happen in the next probably back to where we are pre-COVID days, probably in quarter 1 next year or quarter 2 next year. But I think in terms of business travel, one of the key thing is that a lot of people now, obviously like us, we're going through Zoom. Most of the time we'll probably be in a hotel now, attending a lot of the people to actually be part of this webinar, or basically part of this introduction of HygienePass. But a lot of things now are being done through the Zoom calls. And one key aspect is obviously in terms of corporate demand. I think that will be one really. I wouldn't be able to give a definitive answer, but I think we won't be able to see very strong recovery in terms of corporate demand, because obviously a lot of companies are keeping their budgets handily tight, and they're not traveling due to all these restrictions being put in place. But really, the core focus, where a country like Philippines, a country like Indonesia or Vietnam, there is a lot of domestic travel, right? There's a lot of people who like to travel and get out, or stay in a Boracay. Fortunately, in Philippines, you have all these beautiful islands. In
Mm-hmm,
Singapore,
yeah.
it's a very small island, and we will stay in a 5-star hotel like in Sentosa, or in a 4-star hotel in the city, just to get out of this our home, right? Because I think a lot of us are itching to just start traveling. But in terms of business travel, I don't see it coming back in the next probably six
Okay.
months or quarter 1, quarter 2 next year.
Mm-hmm.
And for leisure, I think it will be very much domestically focused, where a lot of
Okay.
people will travel into intercities, and I think that's what the president of Philippines will also want that to kickstart quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Back again to Dr. Renzo. How could we approach guests? This is being asked by Hessian Marie Getubig, also from Cebu and a partner. She's asking, how are we going to approach guests who do not really follow the hygiene measures? I mean, generally, the survey says that we're good at following these rules, like these
Then
guidelines.
Dr.
But
Renzo won't get us
for the
approved.
yeah, yeah, like for the one or two guests who are like,
Right.
really, yeah, how do you approach those kinds of people?
Right. And, of course, our hope is that, if they want to go to, HygienePass certified properties, they should
Yeah.
also have passed the hygiene
Yes.
rules, right? Again, it takes two to tango. We can't be expecting that the property is, 100% hygienic and then we don't abide by the rules. So that's one. We want to encourage really our future clients and customers, because at the end of the day, it's for your own health. It's for your own health first and foremost. And of course, it's for your neighbor and your family. But provided that we have this one or two people who are not abiding by the rules, they arrive at the entrance without wearing a mask. Uh, First, of course, I encourage our property owners, the people in the reception, to be courteous. First and foremost, that is important. We already are living in a very stressful era of COVID-19, and we don't want additional stress just because had an altercation just because one person did not wear a mask. I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure there are ways to handle the situation in a courteous, respectful manner. Second, I think, and maybe, we're expecting our clients to be, bringing their masks
Mhm.
as they enter the property. But it also will be beneficial if we have some extras, I guess, in the
Okay.
reception. Again, should there be one or two people, who may have forgotten bringing the mask. So it's not like, they intentionally did it. So I think, there are many ways to handle the situation before we maybe call the authorities. Hey, we have a client who's unruly and not obeying, and they're violating quarantine rules, which, by the way, is accountable, can be held to account because it's in the law.
Okay. All right. So yeah, let's remember that it takes two to tango. What Dr. Renzo said, so that we can all travel again. This question is from Maria Bella Yolanda Honor, but it doesn't indicate if she's a partner. But I'm guessing she does run a hotel, because her question is, how do we prepare for the post-pandemic travel boom? She's expecting a boom.
Yeah.
Dr.
Well,
Yeah,
that's good
Adil,
news.
yeah,
Dr.
maybe.
Renzo, do you want
Okay.
to go first?
Yeah, okay. Whoever wants to, yeah. How do
Well,
they prepare for a boom?
I like that, very hopeful and optimistic.
Mm-mm.
Already anticipating a post-pandemic boom, right? And we hope that happens. Maybe it's just a matter of when. And the more we delay, our suppression of viral spread, in the Philippines in general, but also within our own communities, the more that pandemic or post-pandemic boom will be delayed as well, right? So we want to,
Yeah.
revive tourism as early as possible, and that means a concerted effort by the whole of society, individuals, government, and property owners as well. So let's all, do our share. But once that boom happens and people are already, have started traveling, and, we've seen a surge of bookings in RedDoorz properties, which we all definitely want to happen. Uh, this doesn't mean that we will go back to the old normal. Actually, the old normal, as I always say, is abnormal, right? The new normal should be, about citizens who are health conscious. And so, maybe in the future, we will not be using the masks anymore, but we will continue hand washing. We will continue cough etiquette, right? That,
Yes.
those are the things that will need to be retained, in the post pandemic era after COVID 19 has been controlled, if not eliminated. And of course, apart from the individual behavior that needs to stay, the practices of properties will also need to stay. It doesn't mean, okay, there's no COVID anymore. Let's pull out all the disinfectants, or
Mm-hmm.
let's be, less conscious about,
Cleanliness.
social distancing, let's say, in the
Yeah.
common area. I think those are also good things that we can keep when the pandemic is over.
Okay. How about you, Adil? How would you
No, I
prepare?
think I think like what just to add on with Dr. Enzo, right? Preparing the right after the boom. I'm sure like every one of us here would love to travel, right? I think that's the first thing that every one of us want to do once the travel restriction is being put in place. But I think any tourists, any consumers out there will be very health conscious, right? I think with what has happened in the market. I personally think hand sanitizers will always be there,
Mm-hmm.
even after COVID-19.
Okay.
I think like masks, like what Dr. Enzo said, maybe after the vaccine, people will not start wearing the mask.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also what's very important is that there are proper processes being put in place, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if there's a real COVID-19 guest that's staying in the property?
Mm-hmm.
What has the property done to make sure that it's
Yeah.
quickly resolved rather than waiting 1 or 2 days or 3 days and getting guests coming into that room
Yeah.
and who knows that the particular guest could actually get infected as well. So I
Okay.
think just being ready in your cleaning processes, ensuring that properties use technology. For hotels who are not doing technology, obviously start embracing technology because I think that's going to be a very important thing once this pandemic is over after the COVID-19 boom. Uh, but also, really, really, I really think cleanliness will be one really big uh, topic, right? Even after the COVID-19 boom, right? It's going to be the core number one criteria for anyone to choose a hotel. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
rates is going to put a place. Obviously, the brand of the property and so on. But what's really key is the cleanliness of the property, which will I don't think it's going to be around, but it will be there for a long, long time.
Okay. Right. That was a very interesting question by Miss Honor. She's a Red Doors partner from Parañaque City. So yeah, for that post-pandemic boom, those are things to keep in mind, Miss Honor. We have a question from Mr. Rafael Calma from the tourism industry sector also. What he's wondering about the environment friendly approach to all this demand for hygiene, single use face masks, yeah, all those single use is back again because we're trying to keep everything hygienic and sanitized, but how do we approach it in an environment friendly way for the tourism industry, Adil?
Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, Dr. Enzo, go
No,
for
no,
it.
please, Adil. Please, Adil.
Yeah.
So I think one really environmentally friendly, sustainably friendly, right? I think a lot of hotels now are moving towards eco-friendly products, which is going to be a big thing as we change the environment in the hospitality industry. But I also think I think um, a lot of the things that we've put in this hygiene pass program was very health conscious, right? In the consumer or in the tourists that coming into the property. We have not really get into the details of okay, the bottle of water, the bottle of the hand sanitizer needs to be an eco-friendly product. We
Mhm.
haven't got into there yet because we felt that I think putting up a program where it's very streamlined process, where it's very easy for any particular property partner to be part of, with the kind of standards being put in place, obviously the
Mhm.
checklist, get them to be part of the Hygiene Pass program. And maybe in the next stage, whether it's very environmentally friendly in terms of the kind of products that we would like to put in place, I think that will be probably something that we'll do in the next stage, but not at this moment of
Okay.
time. So yeah.
All right. Thank you very much to our audience for all their questions. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but um, before we close, I'd just like to ask Dr. Renzo, what would be your general recommendations for properties now in order to ensure safety and the general welfare of their guests as their and also their staff?
Right. Again, thank you. And I guess my last message to our property owners, to basically everyone in the hospitality and accommodation and tourism sector, listen to your prospective clients. Listen to the tourists of the future, because the tourists of the future will be much more health conscious. They're going to be more demanding for sanitation, for hygiene. They want to feel secure and safe throughout the entire travel journey. And so the more we listen to these prospective clients, the more we will implement the measures that are required to meet their demands. And the more we will see, the benefits, which is increased client confidence, customer confidence, more bookings, and
Mhm.
what our colleague was saying a while ago, a post-pandemic boom, hopefully sooner rather than later. Thank you.
And for Adil, how do you see RedDoorz impacting the tourism and hospitality industry? How are they gonna strategize now moving forward?
So I think for us, it's definitely we came out with this program, obviously for the consumers, but also we want to invite obviously any other hotel partners who owns a property and probably are not listed in online to be part of RedDoorz, because I think tech being part of RedDoorz will make you more visible online through whether you're booking through an Agoda or Booking.com. So obviously, if you're an independent hotel owner, be part of RedDoorz, because it really gives you the leverage to be part of a brand, and also be part of HygienePass. Just to get a consumer confidence, and obviously ensuring that each of the property has the kind of sanitization guidelines as per the WHO. But what was the very, very important that I feel is that, uh, like what Dr. Enzo said, like, hey man, cleanliness, hygiene will be here for a long time, and we're at the worst probably pandemic since 1910s or 1918s, right? And this is probably once in a decade that happened to us, and I think a lot of us will be more in line with cleanliness as we go and travel around, and that's something which this program is all about. And I really urge a lot of property partners, property owners who to be part of RedDoorz. Do join Hygiene Pass program. It's going to help a lot of property partners, a lot of the staff that's in the property, to upkeep the kind of standards that we want them to upkeep, and also consumers look out for Hygiene Pass properties, because those are the kind of properties that definitely have the kind of guidelines that we want them to be part of. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Renzo and Adil. To our audience, remember, get Hygiene Pass certified and bounce back
Great.
from this pandemic. Thank you again. This has been the post pandemic hospitality landscape, embracing the new normal with hygiene focused strategies for Philippines travel recovery. I have been your moderator, Anel Tayahuego. I hope you have a good afternoon.